Some of his brother disciples from Meerut came to the city and accidentally discovered their beloved teacher, and Naren was angry. He said to them, "Brethren, I told you that I desired to be left alone. I ask you not to follow me. This I repeat once more. I must not be followed. I shall presently leave Delhi. No one must try to know my whereabouts. I shall sever all old associations. Wherever the Spirit leads, there I shall wander. It matters not whether I wander about in a forest or in a desert, on a lonely mountain or in a populous city. I am off. Let everyone strive to realize his goal according to his own light." Narendra proceeded towards historic Rajputana, repeating the words of the Sutta Nipata. "Go forward without a path, fearing nothing, caring for nothing, wandering alone like the rhinoceros, even as a lion, not trembling at noises, even as the wind, not caught in a net, even as the lotus leaf, untainted by water. Do thou wander alone like the rhinoceros." Several factors have been pointed out as influencing Naren's life and giving shape to his future message: the holy association with Sri Ramakrishna, his own knowledge of Eastern and Western cultures, and his spiritual experiences. To these, another must be added, that is, the understanding of India gained through his wanderings. This new understanding constituted a unique education for Naren. Here, the great book of life taught him more than the printed words of the libraries. He mixed with all, one day sleeping with pariahs in their huts, and the next conversing on equal terms with maharajas and prime ministers, orthodox pandits, and liberal college professors. Thus Naren was brought into contact with their joys and sorrows, hopes and frustrations. He witnessed the tragedy of present-day India and also reflected on its remedy. The cry of the people of India, the God struggling in humanity, and the anxiety of men everywhere to grasp a hand for aid, moved him deeply. In the course of his travels, Naren came to know how he could make himself a channel of the divine spirit in the service of mankind. During these wandering days, he both learnt and taught. The Hindus he asked to go back to the eternal truths of their religion, hearken to the message of the Upanishads, respect temples and religious symbols, and take pride in their birth in the holy land of India. He wanted them to avoid both the outmoded orthodoxy still advocated by fanatical leaders, as well as the misguided rationalism of the westernized reformers. He was struck by the essential cultural unity of India, in spite of the endless diversity of form. And the people who came to know him saw in him the conscience of India, her unity and her destiny. As already noted, Narendranath, while traveling in India, often changed his name to avoid recognition. It will not be improper to call him from this point of his life by the monastic title of Swami, or the more affectionate and respectful appellation of Swamiji. In Alwar, where Swamiji arrived one morning in the beginning of February 1891, he was cordially received by Hindus and Muslims alike. To a Muslim scholar, he said, "There is one thing very remarkable about the Quran. Even to this day, it exists as it was recorded 1100 years ago. The book has retained its original purity and is free from interpolation." Naren had a sharp exchange of words with the Maharaja, who was westernized in his outlook. To the Maharaja's question as to why the Swami, an able-bodied young man and evidently a scholar, was leading a vagabond's life, the Swami retorted, "Tell me why you constantly spend your time in the company of Westerners and go out on shooting excursions, neglecting your royal duties." The Maharaja said, "I cannot say why, but no doubt because I like to." And the Swami exclaimed, "Well, for that very reason I wander about as a monk." Next, the Maharaja ridiculed the worship of images, which to him were nothing but figures of stone or clay or metal. The Swami tried in vain to explain to him that Hindus worship God alone, using the images as symbols. But the prince was not convinced. Thereupon the Swami asked the Prime Minister to take down a picture of the Maharaja hanging on the wall and to spit on it. Everyone present was horror-struck at this effrontery. The Swami turned to the prince and said that though the picture was not the Maharaja himself, in flesh and blood, yet it reminded everyone of his person, and thus was held in high respect. And likewise the image brought to the devotee's mind the presence of the deity, and was therefore helpful for concentration, especially at the beginning of his spiritual life. The Maharaja apologized to Swamiji for his rudeness. The Swami exhorted the people of Alwar to study the eternal truths of Hinduism, especially to cultivate the knowledge of Sanskrit, side by side with Western science. He also encouraged them to read Indian history, which he remarked should be written by Indians following the scientific method of the West. European historians dwelt mainly on the decadent period of Indian culture. In Jaipur, the Swami devoted himself to the study of Sanskrit grammar, and in Ajmer he recalled the magnificence of the Hindu and Muslim rules. At Mount Abu he gazed in wonder at the Jain temple of Dilwara, which, it has been said, was begun by Titans and finished by jewelers. There he accepted the hospitality of a Muslim official. To his scandalized Hindu friends, the Swami said that he was, as a sannyasin belonging to the highest order of Paramahansas, above all rules of caste. His conduct in dining with Muslims, he further said, was not in conflict with the teachings of the scriptures, though it might be frowned upon by the narrow-minded leaders of Hindu society. At Mount Abu, the Swami met the Maharaja of Khetri, who later became one of his devoted disciples. The Maharaja asked the Swami for the boon of a male heir and obtained his blessing. Next, we see the Swami traveling in Gujarat and Kathiawar in western India. In Ahmedabad, he refreshed his knowledge of Jainism. Kathiawar, containing a large number of places sacred both to Hindus and to the Jains, was mostly ruled by a Hindu Maharaja who received the Swami with respect. To Babu Haridas V. Haridas, the Prime Minister of the Muslim state of Junagadh, he emphasized the need of preaching the message of Hinduism throughout the world. Therein, the Swami spent 11 months in Porbandar and especially enjoyed the company of the Prime Minister, Pandit Sankar Pandurang, a great Sanskrit scholar who was engaged in the translation of the Vedas. Impressed by the Swami's intellectuality and originality, the Pandit said, "Swamiji, I am afraid you cannot do much in this country. Few will appreciate you here. You ought to go to the West, where people will understand you and your work. Surely you can give to the Western people your enlightening interpretation of Hinduism." The Swami was pleased to hear these words, which coincided with something he had been feeling within. The Prime Minister encouraged the Swami to continue his study of the French language, since it might be useful to him in his future work. During this period, the Swami was extremely restless. He felt within him a boundless energy seeking channels for expression. The regeneration of India was uppermost in his mind. A reawakened India could, in her turn, help the world at large. The sight of the pettiness, jealousy, disunion, ignorance, and poverty among the Hindus filled his mind with great anguish. But he had no patience with the westernized reformers who had lost their contact with the soul of the country. He thoroughly disapproved of their method of social, religious, and political reform through imitation of the West. The Swami wanted the Hindus to cultivate self-confidence. Appreciation of India's spiritual culture by the prosperous and powerful West, he felt, might give the Hindus confidence in their own heritage. He prayed to the Lord for guidance. The Swami became friendly with the Hindu Maharajas who ruled over 1/5 of the country and whose influence was great over millions of people. And through them, he wanted to introduce social reforms, improve methods of education, and other measures for the physical and cultural benefit of the people. The Swami felt that in this way his dream of India's regeneration would be realized with comparative ease. After spending a few days in Baroda, the Swami came to Khandwa in central India. Here he dropped the first hint of his willingness to participate in the Parliament of Religions, which was to be held shortly in Chicago. He had heard of this parliament either in Junagadh or Porbandar, and after visiting Bombay, Pune, and Kolhapur, the Swami arrived in Belgaum. In Bombay, he had accidentally met Swami Abhadananda, and in the course of a talk had said to him, "Brother, such a great power has grown within me that sometimes I feel that my whole body will burst." All through this wandering life, he exchanged ideas with people in all stations and stages of life, and impressed everyone with his earnestness, eloquence, gentleness, and vast knowledge of India and Western culture. Many of the ideas he expressed at this time were later repeated in his public lectures in America and India. But the thought nearest to his heart concerned the poor and ignorant villagers, victims of social injustice, and how to improve the sanitary condition of the villages, introduce scientific methods of agriculture, and procure pure water for daily drinking. How to free the peasants from their illiteracy and ignorance, and how to give back to them their lost confidence. Problems like these tormented him day and night. He remembered vividly the words of Sri Ramakrishna, that religion was not meant for empty stomachs. To the Swami's hypochondriac disciple Haripada, he gave the following sound advice. What is the use of thinking always of disease? Keep cheerful, lead a religious life, cherish elevating thoughts, be merry, but never indulge in pleasures which tax the body or for which you will feel remorse afterwards. And then all will be well. And as regards death, what does it matter if people like you and me die? That will not make the earth deviate from its axis. We should not consider ourselves so important as to think that the world cannot move on without us. When the Swami mentioned to Haripada his desire to proceed to America, the disciple was delighted and wanted to raise money for the purpose. But the Swami said to him that he would not think about it until after making his pilgrimage to Rameswaram and worshipping the deity there. From Belgaum, the Swami went to Bangalore in the state of Mysore, which was ruled by a Hindu Maharaja. The Maharaja's prime minister described the young monk as a majestic personality, and a divine force destined to leave his mark on the history of his country. The Maharaja also was impressed by his brilliance of thought, charm of character, wide learning, and penetrating religious insight, as he later said. He kept the Swami as his guest in the palace. One day, in front of his high officials, the Maharaja asked the Swami, "Swamiji, what do you think of my courtiers?" Then came the bold reply, "Well, I think your Highness has a very good heart, but you are unfortunately surrounded by courtiers who are generally flatterers. Courtiers are the same everywhere." The Maharaja protested, "But my Prime Minister is not such. He is intelligent and trustworthy." "But, Your Highness, Prime Minister is the one who robs the Maharaja and pays the political agent." The prince then changed the subject and afterwards warned the Swami to be more discreet in expressing his opinions of the officials in a native state. Otherwise, those unscrupulous people might even poison him. But the Swami burst out, "What? Do you think an honest sannyasin is afraid of speaking the truth, even though it may cost him his very life? Suppose your own son asks me about my opinion of yourself. Do you think I shall attribute to you all sorts of virtues, which I am quite sure you do not possess? I can never tell a lie." The Swami addressed a meeting of Sanskrit scholars and gained their applause for his knowledge of Vedanta. He surprised an Austrian musician at the prince's court with his knowledge of Western music. He discussed with the Maharaja his plan of going to America. But when the Maharaja came forward with an offer to pay his expenses for the trip, the Swami declined to make a final decision before visiting Rameswaram. Perhaps he was not yet quite sure of God's will in the matter. When pressed by the Maharaja and the Prime Minister to accept some gifts, the costlier the better, the Swami took a tobacco pipe from the one and a cigar from the other. Now the Swami turned his steps towards picturesque Malabar. At Trivandrum, the capital of Travancore, he moved in the company of college professors, state officials, and in general among the educated people of the city. They found him equally at ease whether discussing Spencer or Shankaracharya, Shakespeare or Kalidasa, Darwin or Patanjali, Jewish history or Aryan civilization. The Swami pointed out to them the limitations of the physical sciences and the failure of Western psychology to understand the superconscious aspect of human nature. Orthodox Brahmins regarded him with abhorrence, the habit of eating animal food. The Swami courageously told them about the eating of beef by the Brahmins in Vedic times. And one day, asked about what he considered the most glorious period of Indian history, the Swami mentioned the Vedic period, when he said, 5 Brahmins used to polish off 1 cow. He advocated animal food for the Hindus if they were to cope at all with the rest of the world in the present reign of power and find a place among the other great nations, whether within or outside the British Empire. An educated person of Travancore said about him, "Sublimity and simplicity were written boldly on his features. A clean heart, a pure and austere life, an open mind, a liberal spirit, wide outlook, and broad sympathy were the outstanding characteristics of the Swami." From Trivandrum, the Swami went to Kanyakumari at Cape Comorin, which is the southernmost tip of India, and from there he moved up to Rameswaram. At Rameswaram, the Swami met Bhaskara Setupati, the Raja of Ramnath, who later became one of his ardent disciples. He discussed with the prince many of his ideas regarding the education of the Indian masses and the improvement of their agricultural conditions. The Raja urged the Swami to represent India at the Parliament of Religions in Chicago and promised to help him in his venture.